I didn't spend it on vacations and cars and stuff like that. I started to invest in other businesses. I started to invest in different properties. So I started to invest in things that I thought were the right thing to do long term. So I wasn't just spending, I wasn't being careless, but they were the wrong businesses. It was the wrong property before the crash. So I invested in some things that I lost that I should have asked more questions about. I should have had better mentors. I should have went to somebody and said, hey, you've done this for 20 years. How can you show me how to do it the right way and not the way I think is right, because I think I know everything.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor and make sure to give us a follow, because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing guests I got coming on this year. Without further ado, let's get right into this one. Ralph, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity, the pleasure to get to know you yet, to get to meet you yet, brother, tell us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Ralph Dibugnara. I am the regional leader for a mortgage bank in the Northeast, but we're kind of all over the place. We do about $1 billion in mortgage business every single year. Outside of that, I am a big investor in real estate. I have a pretty large portfolio, and I kind of grew up in the New York City area. I still am in the New York City area, and my kids, I have a wife and 2 kids, and they pretty much run my life at this point now. So when I'm not doing this or real estate, I'm running them around like an Uber. So that's the mostly what my day looks like these days.
Amazing, brother. And Ralph, I know you've been able to accomplish a lot in your journey, but before we talk about our success, man, take us back in a time machine, brother. What was little Ralph like growing up? What was the topic of money and wealth? And what was that like in your household growing up, man?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up kind of second generation Italian in Brooklyn. My father was an educator, so was my mom. We lived in a 2-family, but that meant I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. I shared a room with my brother, and we kind of grew up when my father was working a lot because he was just trying to keep us going. So there wasn't a lot. I didn't know there wasn't a lot, but there wasn't a lot around. And then when I came out of there, it was kind of a little bit of a sheltered neighborhood where I was a good athlete, I was a good student, I was popular with that stuff, and then I kind of got out into we moved to a different place, and I got out to the real world, and I kind of totally lost my confidence, really through high school and college. And then I kind of stumbled upon the mortgage business and the real estate business. I got out of college by the skin of my teeth. I really didn't want to be in school. I hated school. I still have nightmares about school. I wasn't good at it. And I got out, and there was nothing really but sales jobs when I graduated for me. So I had a friend that was in mortgages, said, hey, why don't you give this a try? I started. I bought my first house at 23. I've been through some kind of ups and downs in this business, but that's how it really started until now. I've been buying properties for almost over 20 years, and I've been in the business for over 20 years at this point now. So it's been a long journey, but it went really fast.
No, 100%, man. Time for me, I just kind of got into the real world not too long ago. And as soon as the pandemic kind of passed away, it was just like, man, life started coming in hot, man. The time is moving. I don't like it. But to kind of get back into your journey, at least the beginning stages, man. So you said school wasn't something that you like. You still have nightmares from school, and you got out, and the only thing they were offering was sales job, man. Up until that point, how did what you have gone through growing up in school help prepare you or help not prepare you for that first sales job that you ended up getting? How was that like, man, transferring into sales?
By the time I kind of graduated college, there wasn't really a lot of job options for me. And the only people I really had around me were people who had kind of moved on to their own thing, or people that I was still hanging out with that weren't necessarily doing the right thing. And I knew I didn't want to do that, right? So I knew I wanted to do something to kind of grow. So I kind of had my back forced against the wall. It's like, all right, you're going to go take a sales job. It's commission only. You got a little bit of money saved from all the nonsense you were doing before. You got to make this work. And I really had no choice. So I kind of put myself in a position where I had no choice. And it was a work environment it was still a traditional sales environment where I was on the floor with 25, 30 other guys doing what I was doing. And we were working like 6 days a week and 10 hours a day. And my work ethic that I had seen through my parents, really, and my father specifically, who was really worked 3 or 4 jobs only, kicked in. You see that stuff over time. You don't really know what's seeping into your brain, but I was a very, very hard worker naturally from, what I'd seen and what I kind of grew up around. And I learned that when I started working hard in a position where I could, had no cap, and I could make more money every single month, that I started to find some success. And when you start to find some success in something and you're hungry, right, and you're willing to work at it, that's success multipliers. So that's really what happened for me. It was almost a breath of fresh air to find out and to know that school wasn't going to hold me back anymore, right? Because I wasn't a good student, so I didn't excel there. So when I got into the world where I was like, oh, I can still excel and succeed without having that big degree or those good grades, all right, I'm going to lean into this, and that's really how I kind of started on this journey.
Yeah, and that's amazing, brother. And it's one of those things where it's like getting into sales teaches you a lot about the real world. It teaches you a lot about people and interacting with people. It teaches you a lot about yourself. There's like a lot
Yeah.
of mirror work you have to do looking in the mirror, especially in the beginning stage. I still remember my first sales job. It was retail sales. It was at K Jewelers. I was selling jewelry. And I still remember just so awkward. It's just cold calling for the
Yeah.
very first time. And I remember I had the K Jeweler script and we would do like promotion and on the iPads, they had like the database of all the K Jeweler people's, I guess, our customers and clients. And so we just had to go through the list and start calling people. And it's like, hey, do you know there was a 30% off gold promotion this week for Valentine's Day? Blah, 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 blah. And it was just so cringy and awkward. But after a while, like as you said, enough reps, it definitely allows you to grow and put the work in something where, I mean, that job wasn't full commission. So there was a lot of cap. But one of those things where when there is no cap and there is no limit to what you can make, and people like yourselves tend to flourish, but not everyone flourishes. A lot of people I know that work really, really hard and just end up spinning themselves in circles. So, like, what were some of the things that you picked up on as you started to get into sales and started to find some success that helped you differentiate yourself and start finding success pretty earlier on in life than most people?
Um, I'm a very competitive person, kind of naturally.
Yeah,
I always kind of played sports. I was around sports. I'm very competitive that way. Yeah,
yeah,
and just originally being competitive at it, and then the second thing was I kind of got into this world where I always was like an hourly worker, or I was hustling to make the money, or whatever it was, and I got into this world where there was no limitations on what I could do financially. And once I kind of bought into that, oh, I can make 20,000 this month instead of 10,000, or this, I can make more if I do this. Once that happened, um, I really made me hungry constantly. Whereas the point, I'm a business owner now, so it's kind of like that no matter what. Like I'm kind of commission only, even though I'm not commission only. But it kind of put me to a place where I never wanted to be capped monthly again. I wanted to have limitless potential every single month, and that's where I am right now. Yeah, I think being competitive initially was what was the best thing for me. I always played sports. I was always competitive in the street. I learned how to be competitive in the office. So I think the first thing was trying to beat the guy who was sitting next to me or on the other side, or the person who was the top person in the room. It gave me a target every single day, and you don't have to be. It doesn't have to come with ill will, but it gave me something to strive for every single day. There was people around me that were doing well, and that's why you're supposed to surround yourself with good people, because the better people doing around you, the better you will strive if you have that mindset. So that was the first thing, right? There was people making money, there was people succeeding. That was one. Two, once I realized there was no cap on my income, I was somebody who never knew if I could make a decent living or who could make a lot of money. And once I figured out that I could, there was really no turning back. I was the first person that I grew up with that owned a house, that had the type of car that I had. That all these little things that are important to us when we first start making money, I got really quickly. And then when I got them, I realized, well, this isn't it, right? This isn't what's going to fulfill me. So I need more. So then it became like, well, how do I continue to build this? And I actually lost everything in 2008. The market crashed. I lost my income. I lost almost everything. I had to start over again, which was a whole other roller coaster. But the same principles that got me started are what kept me going, right? Pride,
yeah.
competitiveness, kind of the will to put my back against the wall and keep going forward. Like all those little things that got me started were what got me restarted when I needed it.
No, 100%. And one of the things, like, I played sports growing up too, and something that I think is getting frowned on more and more nowadays is just competition, man. And it's one of those things where you mentioned two things in there. I think that I don't want anyone to let that go overhead. You mentioned two, as long as there's no ill will, and then as long as you have the mindset for it to not let other people, because other people's success, there's a lot of people, especially growing up not having much, and be like, oh, why them, or they're not better than me, how come I'm not doing as much as they're doing? And they just kind of get into this negative downward
For sure.
spiral of just constantly like blaming the world for everything. It's very easy to blame them, and it's like competition when used, out of positivity, man, all the like, there's nothing. I love telling this story because like, well, it's not just one particular time, but just working out in football season back in high school, and that whenever we had to work out and we had the max, whether it was bench or squat or deadlift, whatever it was, but like just having all the guys around you, everyone's yelling, everyone's amped up, trying to see, how who can have the highest max, and it's just like we're just pushing each other and sharpening each other's swords and just getting stronger and putting that work in. And it's like those were some of the best times. It's just like that's what healthy, good competition could do. It rises the tides of all ships around them. And so I wanted to ask, so you started to find success. I wanted to talk a little bit before we start going into the 2008 part of your life. As you started finding success early, you bought that house at 23, you started getting a nice car, you started making more money than a lot of people who in the environment that you grew up in are familiar with having. A lot of times when you don't have that coming up and you finally get it, you tend to blow all of it on things that you don't need, right? Because we're never really taught about money. So how did you keep yourself from going down that, rabbit hole of just spending everything that you make and living a fancier version of paycheck to paycheck? Like you're making a lot of money, but you're spending so much that you're still paycheck to paycheck, right?
Yeah, the answer is I didn't. And the one thing I will tell you is I didn't spend it frivolously. I didn't
Mm.
spend it on vacations and cars and stuff like that. I started to invest in other businesses. I started to
Oh,
invest
okay.
in different properties. So I started to invest in things that I thought were the right thing to do long term. So I wasn't just spending and I wasn't being careless, but they were the wrong businesses. It was the wrong properties before the crash. So I invested in some things that I lost that I should have asked more questions about. I should have had better mentors. I should have went to somebody and said, "Hey, you've done this for 20 years. How can you show me how to do it the right way and not the way I think is right? Because I think I know everything because I'm young, cocky, and I have some money." So whereas I did blow it, but I was really blowing it, investing on myself, trying to create a future. So I can look back on it in not a bad way because I didn't create bad spending habits. I created after I failed, I was able to look back on it. And I was like, "What'd you do wrong?"
Mhm.
Well, you didn't have an exit strategy to these bad investments. You didn't have the right people telling you what to do. You weren't necessarily following the right path. So when you do it
Yeah.
over again, do it slower, do it more conservative, ask more questions, be more purposeful about who you put around you to do that stuff. So I think those are the lessons I learned most. Um,
Yeah.
and I listen. I definitely spent some money frivolously. It wasn't all business, but for the most part, my biggest chunks that I lost during that time were really on things I failed at, but they ended up being good experiences. It was like going to college all over again, just
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then, so you said 2008, right? To fast forward a little bit, you had things going well for you for the most part, and then you said you lost it all, right? What was that time period like? Just kind of almost having to like just reset all over again and start from ground zero. Like, what was that like? What was going through your headspace? Like, I know a lot of people in that time period still haven't recovered. I think I was like in, not to make you feel old at all, because you're still pretty young. Um,
Yeah,
at
I
least
get it.
at least compared to other people in real estate, we have a very
Yeah,
well seasoned business industry. So, but like, I think I was maybe in,
the
I don't even
hardest part
remember what
to go
grade
through
I
is
in
become aware.
elementary school.
Yeah. Um, it was dark, man. But the thing with me is that so I mean, I got humbled to the uptown, the biggest way I could get humbled, right? I was living in a penthouse apartment in Manhattan. I ended up moving to a studio apartment for $700 a month in Staten Island. I had to sell. I had one car left. It wasn't a nice car. I had to sell two of the cars. I had to sell some of my properties. My 401k was gone. I mean, I got
Mm.
humbled, and
Yeah.
I ended up moving up to Washington Heights with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, into a rent control apartment she had, and started over. And the thing that kept me going, to be totally honest, was probably pride, which isn't the best thing all the time. But I didn't want to admit to people that I had failed. I didn't want to admit to myself that I had failed. So I just kind of went back to work and.
Yeah.
Um, being a little bit ignorant because I was young and being a little bit too prideful actually ended up working for me because I had no choice but to dig out and I just
Yeah.
started over again. And as a different person, after a couple of years, I was in a different place. I wasn't in the penthouse apartment. People didn't look at me the same. I wasn't a senior vice president of the publicly traded company. I was a loan officer again. So I really had to, but the best thing I got out of all of that was, all right, whatever. So if it gets taken from me again, if something happens again, I know that no
Yeah.
matter what, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to build it again. And I will do it again. Like I'm never going to get too old or too tired to want to build a better life. So the thing it gifted me was it didn't break me, right? Like ultimately, as bad as it was, as depressing as it was, as it didn't break me. So that was the gift I got from it. Um, and to be totally honest with you, without that gift, I don't think I'd be who I am today, right? I think that I would have made 50 other mistakes the wrong way if I didn't get that. So it really gave me something that I couldn't buy. So I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And it's one of those things where it's like you mentioned pride, like that's all you had. And I think a lot of people try to pretty much hate on people for you, using other, I guess, fuel sources other than, positivity and optimism. And a lot of times, most of us have a lot of negative emotions, right? Or things that can be labeled as negative. And Axel Mosley, he talks about it. I
Sure.
love listening to him. He's like, one of the number one rules of entrepreneurship is use what you got, right? So if you have a whole lot of pride, use that. If you have a whole lot of competitive fire under you, use that.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, if it's optimism, use that. But whatever it is, use what you got and use as that to get you to where you need to be. And so you said you had to restart. You lost everything. You got humbled now to kind of pick up. You said you started going as a loan officer all over again. So what was it like in that rebuild process? Like, what did you do to get back on the ground? How did you leverage all your past mistakes and all your past experiences and lessons that you learned to help you rebuild that up from the ground again?
Yeah, I think that the first thing I learned with that, and this is something that young people should definitely understand, especially because I had an advantage in a way where I didn't have access to social media. I had a
Yeah,
disadvantage, whereas through social media I didn't get all the information I could have gotten if I had it. So there's a good and bad to it, right? But
yeah,
um, what I think people mistake at this point now is success comes easy or comes fast. It doesn't, right? Like it's a long, slow grind. It really is. True success is a long, slow grind. So I learned that over the next. It took me like 3 or 4 years, just to dig out, John. Like it wasn't like a quick rebound. It took me 3 or 4 years just to dig out of debt, get back to a stable place where I could start buying real estate again and getting back into the world. Like so, it was just like 3 years of nothing except hard work, right? Not
yeah,
vacationing, not being able to buy nice things, living in a place I didn't want to live in, which I ended up loving. But like just like all these little things to get me. And what you have to understand in general, right? To get to any success, you're going to have to sacrifice. How much are you willing to sacrifice to get there? And life left me with no choice, right? I had to sacrifice it all. So for the
yeah,
next 3 or 4 years, I just sacrificed. I didn't spend. I saved. I worked my ass off. I got it back together. And by 2011, 12, I was back to a stable place. By 2014, 15, I was kind of back with properties and stuff like that again. And I had a portfolio again. And it took me a long time, though. It was not, it's again another life lesson, right? Like anything good is going to take time to get to. And
yeah,
the biggest lesson I took out of all that, right, is when you lose everything or you don't have anything, right? All I
yeah,
wanted to be was comfortable again. In my brain, I was like, wow, I really screwed this up, right? I lost everything. I just want to be comfortable again. If I get comfortable again, God, I promise I won't mess it up again. Right? Just get me to a comfortable place. And then I got comfortable again, and I looked around in like 2014, 2015. I'm comfortable. I own properties. I have a big group that I'm running again. I have 100 employees, and everything was running itself. And I was just kind of showing up at work every day on cruise control. And I realized I was miserable being comfortable. Like I was so unhappy in a comfortable place where I didn't have to worry about anything. So what I was striving for the last 5 or 6 years was a complete lie. And I had to kind of
yeah,
like reassess, like, all right, what do you want? Well, you want to be challenged every single day. You need a carrot to chase. You need something to build towards. Like, if you don't have that in your life, you're not going to be content on a daily basis. So, what we think we want sometimes isn't always what we want. But that's kind of what I learned throughout that process is that I'm not somebody who can be comfortable. I'm somebody who likes to function in chaos. So I need to have that going at all times, or I feel useless.
yeah,
So I got back to a place where I was comfortable, and I realized I was miserable being comfortable. Right?
mhm,
I'm somebody who really functions better when there's a lot going on, right? And it's chaotic, and I'm working on 3 different projects, and that's when I feel the most alive. So by
yeah,
getting myself comfortable and to a place where I didn't have to do much every single day, I felt useless. And I don't know if you watched the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix. If you haven't, it's a really good documentary. He's a pretty amazing dude, but what I got out of him most is he's 70 something years old now, right? And he was governor and
yeah,
he was a famous actor and he's got more money than he can ever spend in the whole entire world. He was Mr. Olympia 10 times in a row. Um, he takes care of these mini horses every single day. He goes out and he mucks their stalls every single day. He lets them in the house. He feeds them. And he said, he's like, I do it because I want to feel useful every single day. I want to do something every single day
mm,
that makes me feel useful. And that resonated with me so much because when there's not a lot going on and it's slow, I just don't feel useful. And I like to feel useful. So I think, being comfortable isn't always the answer.
yeah. No, 100%. And I never heard that before, but it resonates with me a lot, man. I don't know. I feel like um, I don't get depressed, but I definitely feel down. Like when I feel like I can't contribute, or like I can't add no matter what. Like that's the worst feeling ever for me. It's like no matter what I do, I know that I'm just pretty much like useless. Like
Yeah,
there's certain situations where I just like I know I just can't do anything about it, right? No matter how much I try, and it's like those situations are usually where like just reflecting now, as you said, that is probably where I feel like the lowest. I need that shark behind me at all time, like chasing me. Like even if there isn't a shark, like even if everything is going well, like I put an imaginary shark, something just says like I
yeah.
can't.
And you know
Yeah,
what? I know that stress and anxiety and mental awareness is a big buzzwords in today's society, right? But I
yeah,
take a different view on it in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Is that hey, anxiety and stress, that feeling means you're making progress, right? Means
yeah,
there's pressure on you to do something to make yourself feel a different way a lot of times. You're feeling that pressure and anxiety because you're actually making progress. So I try
yeah,
to change the way I look at things. Like, stress feels like something. I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in my brain. I can feel it everywhere. But like, if you use that as fuel to say, hey, I'm actually making progress right now. That's why I feel this way. If I was
yeah,
stagnant and doing nothing, I would feel no stress, but I wouldn't be going anywhere. So, it's,
yeah.
almost like we have to kind of reprogram ourselves sometimes to understand that, like, it's okay to feel anxious, okay to feel stressed, as long as we use it in the right fashion.
Yeah, there's like a difference. I think there's like the scientific term, like, if I'm not mistaken, the eustress and distress. So eustress is the positive stress. So you get more eustress. That's like working out. Like that's the healthy stress that actually helps you turn into something better. And then the distress, that's like the negative stress that really doesn't do anything for you besides you know uh just create inflammation in the body and lead to all the negative stuff. Like if we have more of that positive stress, this saying I love is like pressure bursts pipes or makes diamonds, right? It's just like we get more of that you stress, that
Yeah.
good stress, right? How to help make a lot more diamonds out of us. And so to kind of pick up on the story, right? So you started to build back up. You got to a point where like, all right, you got a couple more properties. You got out of debt. You built yourself back up. You're running. You got employees under you. And you mentioned social media too. You have quite a pretty big following on social media, man. How did you start like now in this next chapter of your life, right? You already built back up. You had a solid basis. When did you really start, ramping things up as growing the IG, right? Writing the books. Like when did you start getting all to this side and like stepping more into like a thought leader versus just like a successful person in a company?
Yeah, I think when I talked to you about being comfortable, right, I realized. So then I got to a place where I want to be challenged every single day. But I was always the guy behind the scenes. I was like, I'm comfortable being behind the scenes. I want to help people behind the scenes. I don't want to be out there. And then what I started to realize is that it was almost me being selfish. I wasn't helping anybody. Like being
Mm,
just behind the scenes wasn't helping anybody. I was just helping myself be comfortable, right? Again, back to the same thing. So and around 2017, I was like, I have to start putting myself out there. I have to start speaking about what I'm doing every single day. I have to start giving people the education that I learned. So that's what it really started at. I started a website called homequalified.com. It's a real estate news website. And how I started it is I started putting out these tip videos, these buy your first home, invest in your first home. And that's how I kind of started. The website is still very, very functional today. We're about to launch another news network for it. And it's something I still do. But education was how I started getting out there.
mm-hmm.
And then through that, I started throwing events. And through the events, I started collaborating with other people who had followings and doing events with them. And that grew it even further. And then,
Yeah.
wow, these collaborations are great. I'm getting to meet all these, I'm getting to meet all these people I would have never been able to meet if I didn't meet them through social, right? I got to meet all these uh, people from Shark Tank and famous athletes and famous musicians and all this stuff, right? This is unbelievable. And I'm growing my network in the right way. So like it became something that was like, all right, well, this is something I could build a business around. And that's what I did. My branding became my business. And then I started writing for Forbes and I started getting quoted in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. And then COVID happened and I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll write a book. And I had
Yeah.
come up with a concept called the growth trap. And the growth trap is basically, you know, from the time we're born into like adolescence, we kind of get bigger, stronger, faster, and we adapt to things really easily, like without doing anything. It just kind of happens
Yeah.
naturally. And we get to a point in life where it doesn't happen naturally anymore, and we have to like work to get over the obstacle. And a lot of times,
Yeah.
quit. And I was a quitter, right? And I reflected back on that. I was like, wow, I used to quit all the time. And then, I started writing the book based around that concept of my growth traps and how I got over them. And then, wow, it's bigger than me. I started researching other people that went through the same things I went, and I started writing about them. And then that became the book. And, so it was just like continuing to try to grow myself. But I think it's back to what I said to you before. I want to be useful. I don't want to feel stagnant. I want to be comfortable. So it's not like, well, this is the next thing. It's like, well, what else can I do? All right, this sounds cool. Let me try
Yeah.
this. You know what I mean? Like, and then if I fail, I fail. But at least, I'm comfortable enough with myself to try all this stuff.
No, 100%. And you remind me of a quote that I try to live my life by. It's the duty of the enlightened is to enlighten the unenlightened. And it's
That's
a
awesome.
Plato's quote, come from Plato's allegory of the cave. People on the podcast probably heard it multiple times. I always quote it. But like
It's
it's
great.
one of the I heard it in my 12th grade year, and ever since then it's like it's kind of our jobs, like to tell as many people as we can the stuff that we've learned and grow so that the next generation can then, use that wisdom and pick it up and just get to running with it. And it's one of those things I think like one of the worst things, at least the most selfish things you could do is to live your entire life and just pass away without leaving anything behind. Because like all that wisdom, all that life experience, all those lessons, all those people you encountered and came across and talked to and shook hands with, like all that knowledge and combined, put together, there's a bunch of golden nuggets somewhere throughout that story, and it's like for you to just like kind of just go on to the next world and just not leave anything behind. It's almost, I mean, not saying everyone has to become an author, right? But
No, but
something, right?
I think we all have a special talent, right? Everybody has something that they're
Yeah,
the best at in the world or can do at a very, very high level, right? Like we all have this inner thing that we can do at a very high level. I almost feel like it's our duty to do that, right? Like, and some
yeah,
people find it, and it's really, really simple, right? Like LeBron James playing basketball is like, listen, he's the best. It was easy for him to find his skill, but I'm sure he's got
yeah,
he's great at too, and he has. He's very charitably good. But I think as human beings, it's our duty at the end of the day to put forth and bring into the light the things that we're really good at. We can help others with.
yeah,
Listen, I think about that all the time. Did I impact this person? Am I making this person's life better by giving them this knowledge? So and that's a constant growth pattern too. But I'm always trying.
yeah. No, 100%. And you mentioned too something too. When you were talking a couple minutes ago about how you're just comfortable with yourself to try and fail. And I always like one of the things I've always heard is like fail sooner, fail faster, fail often, and just keep on failing and just like getting okay with that. And we're kind of brought up, and it's something that I mean, for me, I easily adopted that mindset. For a lot of people, which because we're brought up trained to think failing is a bad thing, and it's like for me, I'm more of the mindset of like ready, fire, aim, and sometimes I don't even aim at all. I just try things out and see if it works, if it sticks, and for me, it just helped me move forward. But I know it's like there's the visionaries and like there's like the integrators, right? And for people like us that are just creative and want to try everything, if the world only had people like us, there'll be like absolutely no system or order in place. But if we only had integrators in place, then nothing will ever get started because everyone will be too scared to get going. So it's like kind of finding a healthy medium of like, all right,
You're
I
right.
got to think and do something, but like, I also need some order in my life.
There's a place for everybody. You're 100. That's a really good point. You know what I mean? I'm reading this book right now that I would recommend. It's by Rick Rubin. It's called The
Yeah,
Creative Act: The Way of Being. Um,
yeah,
and Rick Rubin, if you don't know who he is, he's like one of the biggest behind the scenes guys in music. He was um, he was he was one of the original owners of Def Jam. He produced Beastie Boys, Run DMC. He was one of the first ones there. But he's got everybody: Jay-Z, Lady Gaga, Johnny Cash,
yeah.
Justin Bieber. He's produced for everybody. He's like one of the most recognized creatives in the world. But he's kind of like a hippie. He's an interesting dude. But the whole book is about creatives, and a couple of things he said in it really resonate with me. Right? People say dealing with people who are creative or innovators, right? You said the word innovators, so that's what made me think of it. People who deal with them sometimes like, oh, he's sensitive, or they're sensitive, they're pain to deal with, they're hard to deal with. But what he said really, like, I don't know, I was like, it's clear. He's like, to be an innovator, you have to be sensitive to your feelings. You have to be easily agitated when things don't go well. Like to be somebody who's willing to go down that road that nobody's ever gone down before, that's
Yeah.
the drawback to it, right? You have to be in touch with those feelings. So like it was cool to hear them say that because it really made things a lot more clear to me. And I think we're all creatives and we're all innovators in a way, but how do we figure that out? But what I said before, and even just speaking to you, right? Like meeting you the first time I met you and speaking to you now, you're somebody who's comfortable, very, very comfortable in your own skin. And when
Yeah.
you're comfortable in your own skin, and I can speak to you about it, like it exudes confidence, right? You're able to get
Yeah.
up on a stage as a young man in front of all these adults and speak confidently and get a message across, which is what I saw you do. When
Yeah.
you're comfortable in your own skin, you can do those things. The most important thing for us in life, in my opinion, is accepting who we are and becoming comfortable with it. If you do that,
Mhm.
you are completely unstoppable. Like, I
Yeah.
truly believe that you're completely unstoppable if you're just comfortable in your own skin. Eventually, you're going to find something that's going to work for you for whatever you want and whatever that may be. But the thing that I got that happened most for me through all the failures and the step backs and everything else, right, is I became very, very comfortable in my own skin. And that was the
Yeah.
most important thing that could ever happen to me.
Yeah, I get for me. Well, thank you for one noticing and the compliment, man. I got it from my grandpa. He's a typical Dominican man, like born and raised in Dominican Republic. So like his charisma, his swagger is like the. I mean, you're Italian, so I bet it's similar for you as well. It's like, man, he's like, it's like to the like the top of the tippity top. Like he walk in the room, like he don't even walk in the room. He is the room wherever he goes. Like he has that much energy and confidence. So like growing up, seeing that it kind of just kind of passed down a little bit because I just would notice it firsthand being around him all the time, man.
Listen,
I still remember like being younger, like we didn't have a car growing up, so we would walk everywhere and we would walk downtown. And mind you, he doesn't speak any English, but whenever we would pass someone, and I think down south is a lot more common, but up here up north, no one talks to each other. But when he would pass someone, he would always smile and like wave. And it's like, Grandpa, you know him? And he was like, no. But it's like, you
it's
just,
friendly. Yeah, just
yeah,
very
all the
comfortable.
time.
Yeah.
All the time. I just seen that growing up, and I didn't understand it until I got older.
I understand that better than you know. So my wife's Dominican. She was born. She came in when she was 7. So
Really?
my kids are half Dominican, and
Yeah.
I have a big Dominican family. So
Yeah.
my father-in-law is the same way. He speaks broken English. He's been here for whatever 30 years, 35 years,
Yeah.
but he's the center of attention when he walks into a room. Always,
Yeah.
like always, the center of attention. She's very happy, and you know what? It's interesting to even go there. People are happy without money, right? Like just
Yeah.
it's just culture. Like so, it's a really good segue, but like I can relate. I can definitely relate.
Man, 100%. So let me ask you, man. So want to ask a question, man. So as I said, now you're in this phase where you're just on hyperdrive right now. You're getting it going. You guys said the book already dropped, right? You have this new website you got coming out, right? You have all these exciting new things that you're working on, man. What is like one tip or like secret that you use to be able to stop and smell the roses, man? Because you have a lot going on. You're a high achiever. You want more. You're constantly pushing yourself. Like, what's helping you enjoy everything while you're still going after more?
um, my kids, I will say that my son's 10, my daughter's 8. They just turned 8 and 10. That changed life for me forever.
Yeah.
Just it's a gift. Everything, and it's hard, but everything they tell you about parenting is true, right? Like everything, the gift that it is true. But what time moves very, very fast with children. So I've
Yeah.
learned to like really, really stop and appreciate things and take time to do things because it's going too fast and I don't want it to end. So like
Yeah.
I learned to kind of slow down, appreciate things, be very, very present when I'm doing things now. Like it taught me things that I couldn't have taught myself. I'm much more
Yeah.
present now. I'm much more attentive. When I'm in a conversation with you. I'm in a conversation with you. I'm not someplace else. So,
Yeah.
I think having kids really changed, and we all have something in life that happens to us that changes us. That's what changed me for the better. Um, just my relative like attentiveness to live every single day as a gift. And I think
Yeah.
it taught me how to live every single day as a gift. I'm never going to get this day back again. I want to use this day to the maximum of my ability. And that's what's changed my mindset completely.
That's amazing, Ralph. You are extremely amazing, man. Where can we connect with you? Where can we find
Thanks.
you at so that we can continue with your journey and continue with like just staying tuned with all the awesome things you got working on and coming up in the future?
Thank you. Yeah. So my website's ralphdibugnara.com, my name. It has my book. We have a TV show that's coming out in 2 months. It's going to be on the streaming channels and direct TV. The podcast, everything's on my website, ralphdibugnara.com. And then my Instagram is probably where I'm most active, and that's debug, Dibug. And I put a lot of decent content up there if you're interested in real estate or investing. And besides that, if you message me there, if you have any questions, I always answer. Maybe not immediately, but I always answer. So if you want to contact me, those are the two best places.
Amazing, Ralph. Now it's time for our famous five question. I'm gonna come out the gate swinging, man, with some deep, thought-provoking questions. So, question number one is: what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life? Mic check, mic check.
Yeah, I got you. I got you back now.
Sorry, I said, I said, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Um, ask more questions. Ask
Mm,
as many questions as possible. Ask people who know. Ask people who can give you the answers that it's going to take you years and years to get. you will get much further in life by recognizing, respecting, and asking people questions who have done it before.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
That's a good question. To do the right thing when nobody's looking. It's easy to do the right thing on social media or in public when you're in general view, but to do the right thing when nobody's looking um, is really the most admirable thing I could see. To be that person.
If you had to change someone's life, I think there's a phone ringing.
Hey, John, you there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think there's a phone ringing.
Yeah, it's in the background. It's gonna go off in a second. Sorry about that.
There
There you go.
you go. I was gonna say, so if you had to change someone's life, but you only had one book, which book would you recommend?
Oof. I love Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Okay.
It was put out like I think he put it out 2 or 3 years ago. That book is amazing. His story is amazing. His outlook on life is amazing. He's a great storyteller. Uh, that is a great book to read to kind of get a different perspective on life.
Hmm. What is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
That when I'm not here anymore, it would be nice for people to remember you as somebody who
Yeah.
helped them learn, who helped them be better, who helped them get someplace out of no gain for me, but just to do for somebody else. So if I could have any legacy, it would be that. I want to leave a legacy of Ralph is actually somebody who added something to my life that I wouldn't have been able to add without him.
And for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
That's a good question. Decide where you want to be. That doesn't have to be a 1, 3, 5, or a 10-year goal. Decide where you want to be and figure out what you're willing to sacrifice to get there. And you're going to sacrifice money. You're going to sacrifice time. You're going to sacrifice fun. You're going to sacrifice vacations. But like, understand yourself well enough to understand what you're willing to sacrifice to get to that goal, and then go for it. Because if you're willing to sacrifice, um, that's when you're going to find a real path to success. Because it's going to take some kind of compromise.
Amazing, Ralph. And that's all for our interview. Thanks again for hopping on. I'm so glad we were able to connect and get this scheduled. And so, as I said, thanks for dropping the gems in your story, man. I know it's going to touch a lot of people because it's definitely something I resonated with myself personally. So I can't wait for this to drop, man.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate you having me. It was great.